Is Ukraine winning the war? That's what we're going to talk about today. AC's broken upstairs where I do my filming, so I'm not wearing a shirt. Don't give me shit. It's hot as hell. Now, just like every other video on this channel, I'm going to be extremely transparent. There's no sugarcoating this. Somebody held a gun to my head and said, hey, you have to tell me the honest truth, and if you lie, I'm going to shoot you. Is Ukraine winning the war? I would say no. And that's mostly because they've lost a lot of their territory and they're really struggling to regain it. And that answer would be strictly based off of our typical definition of winning a conflict, which would be annihilating the entire enemy. You take over their region. Now you are the winner of that conflict. Ukraine is further away from that objective than I would say Russia is. But I would say Ukraine is winning the war if the definition was standing their ground and embarrassing the shit out of Putin. Because they really are. In my opinion, Ukraine is making the modern day equivalent to the 300 Spartan last stand. Ukraine is a fraction of the size of Russia, has a fraction of the resources, has a fraction of the technology, yet they are holding their ground, and in some instances, they're actually making advances into Russian occupied territory. And I probably see almost daily or every other day that there was a Ukrainian strike in the mainland of Russia. I believe the most recent one I'll post up here was a Russian oil plant or an airfield that Ukrainian drones just hit. So I want to pull up a couple of maps here and kind of break down why I would say Ukraine is not currently winning the war under the standard definition of winning a conflict or winning a war. I found this image online, but it has a pretty perfect breakdown. This is obviously a map of Ukraine. Now, the dark blue regions that you see are areas that Russia had originally taken during the initial invasion, but that Ukraine has since taken back over. I've personally spent a lot of time in Kharkiv, and you would never know that it was actually taken over by Russians or even that close to the front line. People are still going to work daily, going to bars, going to restaurants, partying. It's crazy. It's very cool. Anyways, the red part is Ukrainian territory currently occupied by Russians. So this gives you a better idea of why I would say on paper, I do not believe Ukraine is winning the war. In a lot of regards, what's happening in the Ukraine-Russia conflict would be considered a stalemate. Basically, both sides are making equal gains and equal losses, and there's been no massive turning points on either side of the conflict. I just remembered I left my fan on again because it's hot as shit in here, so I'm sorry for the background noise. Hopefully when I edit this, you can still hear my voice okay. Putin invaded Russia on February 24th, 2022. This is over 2 years ago at this point. Something that I think a lot of people forget is that Putin had promised the world that he would hit the capital of Ukraine, Kyiv, in 3 days once he invaded Ukraine. Not only has he miserably failed that mission, but he has been held and in a lot of instances pushed back by a much smaller fighting force. If there's one thing I know for certain while I was out there in Ukraine fighting with some of these Ukrainians, is that they will never ever give up. I cannot say the same about Russia and Putin. Putin is a greedy, egotistical dictator, which means the odds of him giving up are very low as well. Which again, in my opinion, will lead to a war of attrition, where I think we kind of are already. Both sides are going to throw as many resources and fighters at the situation as they can until somebody runs out of one or the other. For now, Ukraine has the backing of most Western countries, most civilized, democratic, and free nations. Russia currently has the backing of the shitholes. Excuse me, what I meant to say was Iran, North Korea, China. Now, it doesn't take a rocket scientist or a genius to figure out who is in the right and who is in the wrong. You have 4 countries who have consistently throughout history been on the wrong side of right and wrong, and then you have the rest of the free world who has always been there to help each other and cover each other's backs. I'm primarily directing what I'm saying right now to the Russian sympathizers who have been in my comments lately, and also the Russians or Russian sympathizers who have been direct messaging me and emailing me death threats. I'll throw one up here. I'm going to have to blur out most of it because it's pretty heinous what this guy said. Now, for the record, I have zero respect for these glorified internet trolls. At least the Russians we were fighting against in Ukraine had the balls to put their money where their mouth was, pick up a rifle, and handle things on the front line. These clowns are nothing but sad keyboard warriors. This is the first and only time I will address these goofballs because they don't deserve any more of my time or your time. With that said, I wanted to keep this one short and just cover how I think the war is going and who is currently winning. I appreciate all the support recently, you guys. Again, I'm going to have content up daily, if not every other day. Please like, subscribe, share, turn on notifications, all that stuff, and I'll see you tomorrow.